You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, a school leaders podcast, back with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, for another episode of Monday Matters. Jen, we're recording this for the end of July, and these are the shows where you and I catch up, just talk about current events, and then we point people to our flagship shows, which are on Wednesdays, and then sometimes we have Friday episodes for encores. And Emily's been doing some video stuff for us too, by the way. So even though you and I don't like to see ourselves on video, you can go to YouTube, look for Will Parker. I think that's the handle. I don't even know. And you can find Principal Matters there too. So if you ever want to see Jen and I talk, she's been putting some of these episodes there too. But Jen, how are you doing? You've been traveling like crazy. We saw each other at United. We're back in our home states, and I know your daughter's riding horses. So how's Jen Schwanke?
I'm doing great. Yes, you're right. Traveling so much. I had several conferences and then several different organizations that I worked with, but also trying to keep up too with my work here in my district. A lot going on as we get ready to start a new school year. And I'm in Ohio, so we start relatively early. So teachers are in their classrooms already getting things set up. And we made a huge shift this year from many, many years, forever, of half-day kindergarten to full-day kindergarten. So that's been a much heavier lift than you would think. But, great summer so far. We took a family trip to Alaska and took a magnificent hike. And I say that because I think you and your son took a hike too, right?
We did. We were in Leadville, Colorado. And one of the dreams that my son Jack has had for years is to climb a 14er. And so we made it a goal a year ago to start kind of mapping out where we wanted to go and prepping for that, Jen. And before I tell that story, which I told you in advance, I wanted to kind of share that as this week's Monday Matters. I want to just say to leaders, because it's really weird. We record these, and then by the time you listen to them, things can change. So there's been I've been getting a lot of feedback from leaders who recently are dealing with federal fund freezes and things that are going on too. So by the time this comes out, you may or may not still be dealing with those things. And I just want to say, as someone who supports and resources leaders, and I know you do too, Jen, it does not cost you anything to reach out to us for reflection. Right. And so if you just need to troubleshoot, problem solve, just get somebody on the other side of you, let us know, because we're happy to kind of walk through some of those hurdles with you. And Jen, I'm sure you're walking through some of those hurdles, even in the work that you do.
Right. There's a lot of fear and anxiety out there right now tied to money because, those are the direct services or the people that we use to really reach kids. So a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of advocacy, which I applaud everyone who's writing the letters, picking up the phone, doing what they can do, working with their state organizations to get our story out there, and show why this is not okay.
That's right. Well, I also know there's a lot of anticipation, because as I had a friend reach out to me a couple of days ago to say, well, I'm catching up on Principal Matters because I don't listen in the summer. I just do summer, and I'm catching up. So a lot of people are returning back, or they're getting back in or they will be in the weeks ahead. And so there's also that anticipation that of joy of knowing what's coming, but also a little bit of fear. So I wanted to just use this as an opportunity to share a few lessons from the experience I had with Jack on Mount Massive. And so, Jen, let me just set the stage, because, this is a 14,429 foot mountain. And I only know that because Jack cares about measurements, and it's the second tallest mountain in Colorado. And you know this from your Alaska time, that when you start doing elevation, it's miles are a whole lot different when you have altitude than when you don't. And so we began that day like 4:30 in the morning, got up early, got down to the trail. We were on the trail by 5:30. And so we had backpacks, hiking poles, water, we were ready to go. And we'd been training for months for this. And it's beautiful. So even with all the craziness and the adrenaline you have, you're walking through pine forests and across beautiful rushing water, and you're eventually getting into higher areas with ground cover and wildflowers and pines. And then you get into that place where you're outside the trees and you're into that beautiful in-between space. And that overwhelmed me. The shrubs and the grasses and the rocks and the the little marmots hopping up and down, and then you start seeing those areas where there's still some snow left, those snow packs, and it was just a beautiful climb. But then you hit that rocky area where you're now the altitude hits, and you have that like 1,000 feet climb where you're starting to get toward that peak that you can see, but it feels further away than you can ever imagine because now you can't breathe and now you're
Right.
struggling. And so Jack and I were in that moment where we were both just plodding along, setting goals. Okay, see that pile of rocks? That's the next one. Then let's get there. And right in the middle of this crazy moment, I hear a voice behind me, and I turn around. There's a guy coming up behind me, and he's young, not wearing a hat, no poles. He's just jogging up the trail. And he's like the same
Right.
age as Jack. He's 19. Because I stopped, he shook my hand and introduced himself. His name was Ming, and he goes to school in Colorado Springs, but he lives up in Boulder. And he was so encouraging. He's like, "Oh, it's your first 14-year. You guys chose a challenging one, but you're going to love it. And here's what to expect when you get up there." And then he just took off up the trail. So as I'm plotting and moving forward, I'm also just looking up ahead to see Ming because I'm realizing like, oh, this is possible. If I, even though I don't feel like I can do this, I see someone doing this.
Right.
And eventually we get to this precipice that isn't the peak, but it's the first moment where you can see over the mountains. And Jen, it was one of those moments where I don't, I don't know if I've ever had this feeling, but it felt like electricity. The adrenaline got so high, I felt like electricity was going through my body. I was so overwhelmed with the beauty and just so it was reinvigorating. And at that point, we knew we can't stop. We gotta
Right.
get to the top. So we summited, took photos. We were coming down, and then as we were coming down the mountain, that was an experience we hadn't prepped for because we weren't thinking about the long climb down. We knew from previous experiences climbing down is hard, but we hadn't been mentally prepping for that. And so, man, the miles just got longer and longer, and we're getting tireder and tireder. And we get down to the last 3 or 4, and we were running out of water. And but we make it back to the car, and you know, Jack and I looked at each other, and we realized we had done a total of 14 miles. It is late afternoon, and we're just exhausted but exhilarated,
Hmm.
and it's that quiet, reflective ride home, where you're like, I don't think I can ever do this again in my life.
Right.
Until you wake up the next day, and then you're like, man, let's go. And
Right.
but I asked Jack for his feedback, and he gave me permission to share this. What were the lessons he learned from that hard climb? So this is where I wanted to just sit with you for a minute, and listeners, because you're getting ready for a hard climb, no matter what you're doing in leadership. And lesson one, he said, was be prepared for it to be harder and longer than you expected. We had done so much prep, and it was still harder than what we had imagined. And you know what? I think that's okay for some things to be harder than you think they're going to be. Two, was really practical. He said we should have took more water because we ran out in the last 3 miles, and so we were running for the car so that we could just get to that water. Three, and I loved it that he said this. He said I couldn't have done that hike by myself. It was really helpful to have a partner, and so two is always better than one. If you can collaborate and work with someone else, it's always wise. Four, he said we should have mentally prepared for the downhill, not just the uphill, because sometimes when you achieve a goal, it's what comes after that you're not thinking about. And then five, he said we should have taken more time downhill. We were going so fast to get back to the car to finish the hike that we passed a lot of beauty along the way too. So I just want to sit there for a minute, Jen, because it's a fun memory, but thoughts, reflections as you think about the hills folks are getting ready to climb as they're stepping into their new year.
Right. As I'm listening to this, and I have a list of these lessons in front of me. So it was funny. I was toggling back and forth between the reality of these tips as a hiker. They're all on point as a hiker, and I've done a lot of hikes of my own, and every single one of these should be in some sort of hiker Bible. But then when we make that metaphor to school leadership, and of course that's the audience we're talking to here, I think there's so much here, and it will come as no surprise to our listeners that I have ideas, but being prepared for it to be harder and longer than expected. Let's just sit there for a moment. I've done this almost 30 years, teaching or leading, and I am always taken aback by how lousy I feel in February.
Mm-hmm.
Always. And I need to be prepared for that. I need to remember it is harder and longer than expected. And so when that happens, don't be surprised. Don't beat yourself up. Don't think I'm terrible at this job. I don't know why they don't fire me. It is going to be hard. And even though you know that, you might still be surprised by how hard it is. And so, as Jack said, it's always true for anyone reaching high achievement that training isn't necessarily going to prepare you. And there are going to be really hard times. And you feel great in August, but you might not in a few months.
My wife used to say to me when I was a high school teacher, and I taught freshmen for my first like 8 years, Jen. In sometime, I remember one year in like mid-October, she turned to me while making dinner. She goes, "Well, do you realize we've had the same conversation for 8 years? You always think the incoming freshmen are the hardest kids you've ever had to work with.
Right.
They're so immature. You have all these, and then by Christmas you love them. So
Yeah.
maybe you should just accept that that's going to happen this time too." And I just laughed out loud because she's so right. It's
Right.
like we step into every year with these expectations, and then we're surprised when the same things
That's right.
happen.
Right.
So yeah, it's going to be harder, but you know, there's so many ways we can apply this, and I'll share the lessons from this post with the show notes for this as well, Jen. But you know, being well resourced, I think, is super important. And so, and being well resourced means more than just having the money you need for what you need to do too. It means having the people around you that you know can support you through the hard times too. So think about who that is in your team, or think about who that needs to be in your network. And that's why I'm always encouraging you to reach out to people like me and Jen or other people that could also support you in this work as well. But then let me just say this, is because I know we try to keep our Money Matters shorter than our flagship show. The other thing I wanted to pull from this conversation too was just the power of not missing out on the moment that you're in. Because even though things are going to be hard, and they always are, and even though challenges will have to be faced, and you're going to have to come up with really difficult moments to solve in your schools, your leadership, there's also beauty. And Jen, I remember at the end of last school year, you shared an audio of children playing on a playground where you had just been out one day at a school and you caught that sound of children and the laughs and the squeals and the giggles and all the things that happen in those moments. And there was a moment when Jack and I were coming on the down trail when we were in that in-between moment again. And I'm actually just going to read you this paragraph because I wrote this down. At one point, I remember looking at the back of Jack's head as he walked in front of me. His ears were red from the day in the sun. His brown pants were the color of the dusty trail at our feet. His image was enveloped by the blue sky above, with white clouds hovering, the surrounding green of shrubs and grass, the yellows, purples, and whites of flowers along the trail, and stretching out to pine forest of green, and the entire horizon surrounding us with other gray peaks covered in rivulets of snow. I tried so hard to imprint this memory in my mind. At 56, I realized the opportunities for moments like this are limited, but for him, they're boundless.
Right. Right. It's
So
beautiful.
leaders, you're getting ready to step into some opportunities that could be ones you savor, could be ones that you just can't wait to be over with. But for the kids you're serving, or for other people that you're serving, they may be novel, they may be new, they may be beautiful, whatever they are, but don't miss the opportunity to just soak in whatever it is you have in front of you, because what you do matters.
Yeah.
All right, Jen, as we wrap up, how can folks stay connected with you if they want to reach out to you this school year?
Yeah, they can find me at my website, jenschwanke.com. And I also have just launched a new newsletter, and it's called Field Notes with Dr. Jen. So every Wednesday, I'll just be sending out some things that I'm thinking about. So sign up to be part of that.
I'm pretty sure I'm one of the first subscribers.
I think
Jen,
you are, because you were the
because
first
as
one I
soon
told
as
about
I
it.
saw that, I just subscribed immediately. And I was so excited to see you do that, because we've done a newsletter through Principal Matters that if you're not subscribed listeners, you can go to my website and subscribe, because every week we put out, Emily helps us put out these podcasts and summaries of other conversations and anything else that we've done through the show. But Jen, it's so neat to see you reflecting in your own voice through your newsletter. And I just can't wait for people to have that as a resource.
Thank you. And I will, there is a subscribe path on my website. So jenschwanke.com. And thank you, Will. Really is true. You were the first person I sent the link to, and I think you were subscriber number 1. So that feels pretty appropriate.
Yeah. Well, Principal Matters listeners, thank you for taking time to just connect with us this week. And if you're listening for the first time to this show, keep listening, because you're going to hear other conversations coming up in the days ahead, or you can go back to our archives to more than 400 and something shows with more than 1.5 million downloads. Jen, I've lost count. But it's been a wonderful journey, and thank you for listening in. And until next time, thanks for doing what matters.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.